Periscope. Down Periscope. Yeah, just to be clear, so these will be heard on every submarine in the Royal Navy.
Yeah, they're just automating and digitizing everything. You know, the commander presses a button and the recording of your voice will be heard.
Yeah, I'm not interested in all that. Can we just crack on? Fire the nuclear weapons!
This is Plausibly Live.
Well, it's been a few weeks, and frankly, I'm not back to 100%, but at least we're on the right direction now. It's been crazy. I don't know. The surgery itself went great. I don't remember any of it, as I said briefly some weeks ago. They gave me these little green pills, and I swear to God, what I remember is taking those at 8:30, sitting down in the chair, reading in my Kindle. I set my Kindle down to stretch a little bit. I looked at my watch. It was 9 o'clock, and that's literally the last thing I remember until I got home and woke up in my bathroom with my wife trying to take the gauze out of my mouth. That part went great. The recovery did not go so well. As I was telling Bill on Tuesday, by the way, I meant to record this on Monday, but when I started to record it, my voice was just gone, and some of the other effects that I was having kicked in. The first week I was probably okay, and then the antibiotics, I'm told, now again, I'm not a doctor, I don't know these things, but I started having pain in my chest, centralized. It wasn't radiating, wasn't shooting down my left arm, anything like that, but I couldn't keep anything down. I mean, nothing. I couldn't even keep water down, nothing. And that went on for about 12, 13 hours, and Cammie finally said, we're going to the emergency room. And if you've been following the news, you know that our emergency room up here in Silverdale has been in the news nationwide for its inability to do with anything. So we ended up going to Gig Harbor, which is about 30 miles away. It was okay. I mean, it's an emergency room, folks. You're going to wait. The only thing I was a little, I don't know, snitty about was I really just wanted to lay down. I was so tired, and they just kept in a chair. Anyway, turned out that it was a gallbladder attack. The ER doctor thinks it was because of the antibiotics that I was on were, quote, too effective, unquote. I don't know. You know, again, you combine antibiotics with essentially not eating for a week, protein shakes and the likes of that, but, you know, it changes your system up a little bit. Anyway, ended up with a gallbladder attack. They got me taken care of, sent me home somehow or another, and nobody can explain it. Ended up with what appeared to be a partially blocked colon, and that created some interesting things. That went on for a couple of days. That finally cleared Sunday morning around 3 a.m. I was so hungry at one point, still can't chew anything, so I had some applesauce. And I swear to God, about 45 minutes later, I mean, it's disgusting, but about 45 minutes later, everything was clear, and there you go. What I did notice over the past couple of weeks is I have just been exhausted. I don't ever remember being that tired in my life. And I couldn't sleep. I would sleep for, cat nap for 10 to 20 minutes at a time, and then try to rest. It was just very frustrating, and it got worse and worse and worse. And I finally, I would guess, probably Saturday of last week, I probably turned the corner a little bit. Felt well enough on Tuesday to do Dave Does History, although I will tell you that took a lot out of me. I was surprised at how much it took out of me. I had planned, as I said, to record this show on Monday. That didn't work, but here I am, finally. On Thursday, I finally feel human. I finally feel strong enough to actually do things. I'm probably going to go back to the gym today, finally. And all in all, I think we've rounded the corner and are in the home stretch. It's going to be another 4 months before they finish the project in my mouth. That I got to be honest with you, that whole thing has been very, very successful. You may already hear it in my voice. I don't know. For the first time in probably 5 years, I'm not doing the constant coughing, the constant drainage into my throat is gone. That has been a huge blessing. Things you don't know about, background wise. I would have to get up an hour before I did anything to just try to clear my sinuses and my throat. And even then, during the shows, I can hear it on the tapes where the drainage just gets so bad that it's like, start losing my voice and stuff like that. Anyway, that's gone. I'm very happy about that. Very pleased about overall the way things have gone with my mouth. A couple of minor issues, nothing big. One of which is I have to wear a retainer, which I'm not real happy about because it really, number one, it hurts, but number two, it makes it very difficult to speak, and so I have to take it out to do practically everything, which sort of, in my mind, defeats the whole purpose of it, because if I'm talking, eating, drinking, I have to take it out. Well, really, when am I not talking, eating, or drinking? Not that I can chew anything these days, but, you get the idea. So anyway, there you go. So that's just a short update on what's going on. I feel, like I said, I'm feeling much better. Feel like I'm almost back to, I'd say I'm probably about 80%, which isn't 100, but, we're getting there. There's still some more stuff coming, and I know that. But there you go. I'm still pretty weak overall. Probably not ready to come back full time. I am, doing Dave Does History now with Bill. We will pick up What the Frock next Sunday. We're on eager to get back to that. And the rest of it as I can support. I have a couple of shows that I've written while I was out. That was one of the things while I was out was, watching the news, watching shows. And somebody said on the Facebook page, hey, good thing nothing happened while you were out. I'm assuming that was sarcastic because a lot of stuff happened while I was out. And we'll start catching up on some of that tomorrow, I hope. And if not, certainly by Monday. You can probably guess what some of it is, but at the same time, there's stuff happening every day, and so we got to carry forward with all of that. That said, this past week has been Passover, which has been, boy, talk about difficult from a halakhic viewpoint. One of the requirements of Passover, of course, is that you have to eat matzah. And for whatever it's worth, I like matzah. I'm a huge, matzah has never bothered me. I love matzah. The things, one of my favorite snacks in the world, of course, is salsa and cheese, and putting cheese and salsa on matzah is, man, I mean, I could snack on that pretty much all day, but I can't chew anything. So it made it kind of hard to do Passover, at least in the traditional of senses. But it didn't keep me from studying and reading and those sorts of things, which is something that, again, I've said to you before, this is not a religious show. Plausibly Live is not a religious show, but I will tell you that it does influence what I do. I have said so many times that the study of Torah and the study of Constitution are very, very similar from a functional standpoint, how you do these things. There are multiple ways, of course, of doing theological studies. I went to seminary and we were taught what I consider to be the worst way, the inductive principles, Inductive reasoning is flawed in my opinion, but be that as it may, it's not a method that I use. But when it comes to studying Torah, when it comes to studying Constitution and studying about those things, I have found that the methodology is very similar. I'm not saying that the Constitution and the Declaration are Scripture. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the methodology is very similar. And because of that, when I am studying Torah, I tend to see things in a really constitutional way. Does that make sense? So in other words, it isn't just the theological concepts that I'm picking up. There's a lot of political thought, I guess, that I get from stuff. So when Passover occurs, Passover, for those of you who don't know, is an 8-day festival. And usually, sometimes in the middle of it, there is a Shabbat. Well, there's always a Shabbat in the middle of it, but you get the idea. That Shabbat that happens in the middle of Passover is generally thought of as kind of the meh Shabbat. It's not the Shabbat Haggadah, the grand Shabbat. It's not, there's nothing really special about it. It just sort of happens in the middle of this festival where we're already celebrating things. And so it's sort of, it's not that it's not important because it's Shabbat, but it's not something that, everybody's going, yay, it's the special Shabbat or anything like that. But one of the interesting things about this Shabbat that happens during Passover is that we do the Torah readings, of course, but the Haftorah reading, which is it's a secondary reading that usually comes from the prophets or the writings, and it's related to whatever the topic at hand is. And on this particular Shabbat of Passover, the Haftorah reading comes from the book of Ezekiel, specifically the 34th chapter, which is probably a very familiar story to you, or at least it's a story you know about. And that, of course, is the Valley of the Dry Bones, where Ezekiel is taken to this valley where he sees millions of dried bones that are desiccated and dead. And that's the whole point, is that they're dead. And in the story, God talks to Ezekiel and tells Ezekiel to prophesy over the bones. The bones come back to life. God breathes into them. And since that happened, there are debates after debates. And depending on what your particular theology is, kind of depends on how you view this story. There are a lot of theological concepts here that are beyond the scope of this discussion today. And we're not going to get into the theology of the dry bones because that's not what I want to talk about. But just so you know, even in Judaism, there is grand debate over what this vision, what this story means. Did it actually happen? In other words, were the bones actually real? Did this really happen? And the bones were raised again. Is it just allegory? I will tell you that I was raised to believe that. I was raised to believe that it was just purely allegory. It was just purely vision. But I have come to believe the opposite of that it wasn't, that this actually did happen, that God actually did take Ezekiel to this valley where these bones were. And without getting into a lot of the Talmudic discussion and those kinds of things, there's some reasons why we believe that. I think you'll find that most Jews believe that. In fact, there were sages of the Talmudic area who claimed that these bones that had been raised were their ancestors. So, anyway, the biggest lesson of this, though, as I said, Constitution and Torah study are very similar. The similarity of methodology is remarkable. And so when I was reading this story, when I was listening to a lecture on this story, what called to me was a particular, I don't want to call it interpretation, but a particular drash, a particular teaching of this idea that Ezekiel was taken to the valley, shown the dead bones. Yes, the whole thing is about the resurrection of the dead, but there's a little more to it than that. And that was that it was Ezekiel who was told by God that he had to speak to the bones. He had to prophesy to the bones. Even though it was God that would reanimate them, it was Ezekiel who had to speak to the bones. He had to say to the bones, do this. In all of the lessons of the story, all the points of the story, and all the discussion about what it means, is it allegory, is it this, I think that really hit home. Ezekiel must speak. Our forefathers, the people that founded this country, spoke, and they spoke eloquently and in great detail about their love of liberty, their belief in liberty, and their desire to have that liberty. As we look around our world today, you almost have to come to the conclusion that our understanding of liberty as a people, as a corporate people, our understanding of liberty could be compared to those dry bones. Those dry bones are desiccated, they're crushed, they're dead. And in many ways, our understanding of liberty is the same way. As you know, if you've listened to the show for so long, you know that I'm appalled by the way our politicians misuse the word. I'm appalled by our failure to understand that freedom and liberty are not the same thing. But if we look at the understanding of liberty in a metaphorical, allegorical way as the dry bones, what is it going to take for those dry bones to live again? If no one speaks to them, they can't. But if we speak to those bones again, the spirit of liberty can return to them and liberty can live again. But it requires us to do it. It isn't just going to happen. They're not just going to pop up one day and go, look, we're alive again. It requires us to continue to keep that spirit alive and to continue to speak about those things. And while it's not necessarily theological, I think that there's some parallels there to that remind us in this Passover season as it ends tonight that just like the dead can be resurrected and restored to life, liberty could be resurrected and restored to life. But it requires us to speak. It requires us to teach. It requires us to take action. And until and unless we do that, they're just a bunch of dried bones, desiccated, scattered, and dead. If we want them to come back, we must speak. Take the time right now, tell the people that matter in your life you love them very much. You'd miss them if they weren't there, so don't pass up those opportunities. You don't want to have that regret. Plausibly Live, I'm Dave Bowman. We'll see you next time, right here on the Dave Bowman Podcast Internet Radio Show.